Are you surprised that Oklahoma City just said, you know what, we're not messing around with restricted free agency on Chet Holmgren, who's missed time and everything else. We're going to give him the max deal and call it a day.
Not surprised at all. I mean, I think you got to lock up these players now. You don't want to even see restricted free agency. And I think that that's kind of a trend that we've seen with a lot of these players this year in the CBA is that they're opting for that guaranteed money. They don't want to have to go see what that open market may be about. But I think also it speaks to it's Oklahoma City Thunder. They just won a championship. This is their core. They're going to build around SGA. He's the MVP, Finals MVP. Literally every award he took home individually this year, it seemed like. And then when you add in Chet Holmgren and what he could bring, his future, the potential that he has, we've only scratched the surface with him. So I think it's wise for the Oklahoma City Thunder to lock him up. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Williams is going to come right after that. So once they have their big three locked in there, that's when it's going to start to get a little bit interesting for the Thunder, because they were really good and smart about moving off of certain contracts on rookie extensions like Josh Giddey before that became too expensive. They got an Alex Caruso. They're going to start playing these cap strategies to kind of maximize keeping their big guys there, their notable marquee guys, and then kind of churning out some of those role players to kind of keep this extending that window for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that everybody assumes with OKC. Oh, playing in OKC, we all assume in today's economic climate, and you see the numbers going up and up and up, right? We all assume that despite the numbers going up and up, that Oklahoma City will not be able to afford their top three players. We generally believe now that you can only afford one player on a big boy max and maybe a second guy, but certainly not a third guy. Like if you look at the Lakers with Luka Doncic and LeBron James, like they can barely fill out their roster, and they were hoping and praying that Austin Reeves took, his extension, which he did not take, and now he can sign next year for almost $200 million, which doesn't seem very likely that you can sustain a business model where three players are making a max. So teams have to make decisions and players have to make decisions. Players are not going to pass up money. Teams are not going to place themselves in this very, very super restrictive luxury tax second apron. And it's really complicated for people who don't know but so much about this. And you think, man, is this a hard cap? Yes, it is a hard salary cap. And before we get, I'll get into that. I'll get into that in a minute because I want to stick with OKC because I don't want to lose the Oklahoma City point. You're going to have, in a couple of years, you're going to have Chet Holmgren making $50 million in 2 years, right? Or close to 50. He's going to be making 41, which is the projection, $41 million. Shai's going to be at actually $40.8 million before his extension kicks in. And if Jalen Williams has the same thing, then he's going to be right around Chet Holmgren's number. And you're like, man, can you have three guys making $40 million? In theory, yes, you can, right? The cap in 26-27, which is the year that I'm talking about, that is projected to be $165 million. That's before the taxes, before the aprons, before everything else. That is just almost like close to the floor of what you can spend is $165 million. And you will have three players, and if they get this JDub deal done, you will have three players making 120 of that 165. You can once again go over the cap to sign your own guys and everything else. And here's the important part, because we think of Oklahoma City as the team that will never pay the luxury tax. That's not true. We think of the James Harden situation from 2012, where Russ was on the max, KD was on the max, they signed Serge Ibaka to a big deal, and they let James Harden walk, or they traded James Harden because he didn't want to take $4 million a year less than what he was being offered. So they traded him for, I believe, Steven Adams, Jeremy Lamb, and I think a draft pick that became Steven Adams, Kevin Martin, whatever it was, like some machinations of that deal. I can't remember exactly, but it was trade him to Houston, and that's where Harden went. And OKC never got back to the NBA Finals, which is where they were with the first Russ, KD, Harden year, where they were in full bloom. The point I want to drive home to this point is Oklahoma City has paid the luxury tax before, believe it or not. They paid the luxury tax 5 times. I know that sounds like a big time shocker. Yeah, look on your face, right? That's a big time shocker.
Wouldn't have expected that. It was a small market team like that.
Right. And that's the thing. When we think Oklahoma City's being cheap and blah, 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 they paid the luxury tax. They were actually the league's highest luxury taxpayer in 2018. They paid $61 million in taxes for a team that did not even get out of the first round of the playoffs. That was I believe that was the first year of the Paul George, Carmelo Rush year. The year before that, they paid $25 million. So they have paid big time money in the luxury tax. They try to not get into it because here's what happens. And this is where Dan Titus can interview me. If you don't pay the luxury tax, because of the league's revenue sharing system, as long as you don't pay the tax, you get that money back to you from the teams that do, right? So if 10 teams wind up paying the luxury tax, 20 teams get that whole number into a pie, distributed evenly back to you that you don't have to give to the players. That is just your own profit. That is free money. So when you decide to go into the luxury tax, not only are you paying into the pot, you are removing yourself from actually getting money back. You are subsidizing other teams, pretty much.
Interesting.
So that's why teams really don't want to go into the luxury tax, let alone the very restrictive aprons. And you have to ask yourself, if you're Oklahoma City, and this is where the draft picks come in, you sign the Chet, you sign the JDub, and then you ask the question later, okay, are we going to be able to afford to keep these guys on the back end? Will the league revenues continue to grow so that we can keep our 3 guys and not have to leverage draft picks or whatever for the future to augment the players behind, the, Isaiah Joes, the guys who help build out your roster?